back to Conversation at the Intersection, and I have Stefanie Johnson here today, and she's written an amazing book called Inclusify. First of all, welcome, Stefanie.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you.
Please, your title of your book, Inclusify, what does that mean?
To really have inclusion, you have to have not just that belonging feeling that people think of as inclusion, like I feel like I fit in, I'm accepted, I'm valued, but also the uniqueness part. And that means you have diversity, you have uniqueness, but also that people feel like they're able to be their true selves. And then you have inclusion. And that's why I use Inclusify rather than just inclusion, because I think including isn't enough. That's just like,
right.
Hey, I gave you a job, you're included, you're in this room, I included you in the meeting, but that's not really true, right? Like if you've ever been in a meeting where people aren't listening to you or they're talking over you, that's not inclusion, right?
Or that they are listening to you, but only if you conform to a particular type of person. Like you leave so much of who you are at home, you don't bring it to work.
No, and that's the good stuff, right? The stuff that actually drives innovation, which is so much of what you do, and improves decision-making. It's the difference. And so even if you have diversity, but you're leaving the uniqueness at home, then you're not actually getting the benefits of diversity. If people are scared to voice different opinions or perspectives, then you might as well just have like a homogeneous group.
Your definition of inclusion is uniqueness and belonging, right? Just tell us a little bit about that. Give us some color to that.
Yeah. So I think, I talk about myself and my own experiences in the book. And I guess if you think of uniqueness and belonging, I'm probably one of the people who tends to have belonging, like people will accept me. But I also am like an intense social actor. So I'm not really I'll say most of my life, I'm not really being myself, in which case I have low uniqueness, high belonging. That's not inclusion. Or if you have high uniqueness, like everyone's like, you are fully you, every time we talk about the one woman in the room, what do all women think about this topic? Or what are all people of color feeling right now, Franz? Right. Then you have high uniqueness, but you're not being included as one of the group. You're being like excluded. They're saying you're different. Tell us your different perspective. And it's really the two things together. It's like being accepted and valued for who you really are.
Now, you then went further and you said, okay, I saw you kind of like hinting at this 2x2, right? So I think uniqueness and belonging. You identified basically, let's call them different types of archetypes.
Yeah.
6 actually in total, that make up different parts of this sort of 2x2 or matrix. And I think they're fascinating. I wanted to focus in on one in particular because this one comes up a lot. It's the person they sort of call the meritocratic manager. Look, it's all about the best person for the job. Tell us a bit about this person.
In doing the research for the book, I found these like very consistent types of leaders who emerged, and some of them were really good at uniqueness, some were good at belonging, and then there were meritocracy managers, which is the one you're referring to. And they believe, I think what's interesting is all of the leaders believe they're doing right by diversity and inclusion, because I'm not being biased, I'm hiring the best person for the job. And so that's kind of the slogan of the meritocracy manager is, I don't want to lower the bar, I just want to hire the best person and let performance win the day. And in doing that, you're not necessarily bringing people together and you're not honoring the differences that people bring. You're just looking usually for people who are quite similar to yourself. So if you think, like for yourself, you are a self-made man, you've been very successful, probably through hard work and because of your merit, right? And so if that works for you, then you imagine that is how other people should live, I guess.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really work.
Well, why not? What is it? Where does this sort of thing fall apart?
Well, for a few reasons. One, we're terrible at defining merit. Like, what is merit? Did you go to Harvard, or is it you worked for this company? But all of those different pieces of merit have intense bias built into them. Like if you think of going to the Ivy League school is the best predictor if you're getting into an Ivy League school is your parents' income. Is that merit? It's like, I don't know, maybe your parents' merit, but probably not yours. So that's one problem. Second, there's this weird psychological phenomenon that I love, that when you tell someone to make a decision based on merit, research shows they actually become more biased in favor of white men.
I found this fascinating. Okay, so just to frame it, hey, you can choose between two people. This is a study. But now I'm explicitly asking you to make your selection based on merit. And then what happens?
Then they tend to rate women or people of color lower and rate white men higher. And I
It's
think
just the exact opposite.
And the resumes are exactly the same, right? Because depending on what condition you're in, they just switch the resumes. But I think it's because we've created this kind of mental dichotomy of do we care about diversity or meritocracy?
Right.
And so if you say we care about meritocracy, it's almost like, oh, we don't care about diversity, and therefore we should give the job or the raise or whatever to the most prototypical person in the US, which is a white man. Yeah, absolutely. I wondered actually what you thought of the myth of multiplicity. I think is what I called it, but it's basically the idea that if you are hiring the best person for the job, I think I use the analogy of the quarterback is the all-star. You wouldn't want 5 quarterbacks, right? But when it comes to the best person for the job, we're this is the best person, and this person who's really similar but slightly less good is number 2, and then you have 5 really good people but not a good team.
I think this happens a lot, and I think it is detrimental to setting any team up for long-term success. So then I guess the question then becomes, well, how do I become an inclusifying leader? And you outline sort of a pathway.
Yeah, so I guess the first most basic step is to move your unconscious bias, which we all have, right? It's these are mental associations between, if you think of a nurse, you think of a woman. If you think of a surgeon, though, you think of a man, right? Those are unconscious biases. We all have them. And so many people are won't admit that they have it, that they can't correct them. So if you admit it, then I think those become conscious biases. It's not saying, okay, I'm a racist and I'm okay with that. That's not conscious bias. It's just an awareness that bias might affect your decisions. And if you get past that, then the next hurdle is to start consciously inclusifying. So you're working to take actions to create more inclusivity. But then the great thing is after you do that long enough, it just becomes unconscious. It just becomes your way of being. And then you don't have to work quite so hard to do it all the time.